Hey, everybody, welcome to the Faith and Fandom Podcast on the Love Thy Nerd Podcast Network. I'm Hector Miray with Faith and Fandom, and today I'm joined by Darren Shell, who we're going to be talking about the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, Comic-Cons, and life in general, and everything that kind of goes with that. So, Darren, thank you for joining me here today. Appreciate
No
you
problem.
being willing to jump in. I was just like, after spending the weekend, uh, you know, watching you guys work and everything, I was like, oh, this is a good time to have this conversation. Um, so, I know. So, what's your muggle job? What's your day job?
My day job is I am a integrated facility design manager for a hospital system.
What's
So
what's
what that means
Yeah,
is
what's that mean?
um, when we start to remodel or we build something new, I go in and work with the nurses to see how they flow to keep the best flow of patient information, family, all that. And then basically I just then help design a floor plan that keeps the building out of their way.
Okay, that's it.
It's an odd job.
It's definitely a distinct one. Like, how'd you get into that?
Well, I've been a manufacturing engineer for, 25 years before this. So I did a lot of floor plan development and that stuff with those jobs, and then got into lean manufacturing and all that. And when I got laid off the last time, it's like, I like what I do, but I don't want to do it in this industry anymore. So it was one of those things of like, I kept trying to find a job and then push through, and it was this one sounded good, but it was just exactly what I had, and I didn't really want to do it. And so then I kind of just said, okay, I'm done. God put a job in front of me, and I'll take it. And then, sure enough, this job at the hospital popped up, and it's doing exactly what I had been doing for 25 years, but it's just in a hospital environment instead of a manufacturing environment.
Okay. Um, that's definitely a cool occupation. Like, so how long will you spend at a hospital, or do you bounce around to different ones, or?
Yeah, we have 6 hospitals and 149 external properties. So wherever the construction is being planned is where I go.
Okay. And hospitals are always under construction, so it's
Exactly.
that's neat. So I've known you a while, and forgive me for this, but you've amalgamated it into just part of Comic-Con industry and life for me. So I don't know where that started, but like I just like it's just one of those you've been there. You've been there a
Yeah.
while. So um how did we meet? How long have I known you? Like where did we pick up?
So let's see what. So Jason David Frank died by suicide in November of 22.
Two? Yeah.
Yeah. So we met in April of 23
At the Fayetteville show.
at the Fayetteville show.
Okay. I knew it had
Um,
been a couple years, but I was like, okay.
Yeah, after Jason David Frank died, uh, Keith actually reached out to AFSP and said, "I want to do something together. Somehow, I want to get you guys in the Fayetteville Con. We need to get more people aware of this." Um, we started talking about it within AFSP, and they said, "Well, they're asking for somebody to help with a con." I'm in. I got it. Y'all just because most of them didn't even know what a con was. So as soon as they said they want to help a con, I got it. My daughter and I'll do it. We're in. And so then I came down and did the April con. Keith was nice enough to put us right next to the brothers Boyd at a table. And so then Chris and Josh just kind of adopted me, and they showed me all around the Fayetteville con and from there. And then it's just been, we've been together every 6 months and the Boyd con and everything for the last couple of years now.
So we'll talk about like more of the con aspect of it, but how did you get involved with AFSP in the first place? Then it's the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, because I
Yes.
keep trying to add letters into it every time I say it.
Don't worry, most people drop letters out, but
But the
uh,
and this is totally not on any same level, but I work with colleges, and so one of the words that I hear all the time is FAFSA, but
mhm.
it's FAFSA.
Yeah.
It's like because every person that says it out loud, FAFSA, but it's FAFSA. or FAF. Yeah, that's right. SA. And I'm just like, it's a nightmare for me on spelling things. So anytime we're in acronyms, I'm just like, my brain starts hurting. So outside of cons and like just the con life, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. How did you get involved with AFSP in the first place and why?
So in 2006, basically two weeks after Emma was born, my dad died by suicide. And I went through that whole struggle of finding myself back from that and figuring out how to deal with that and therapy and all that. And then in 2017 or 2015, my best friend died by suicide, and I had literally been talking to him at 7:30 the night before, and he was gone at 5 o'clock the next morning. Um, and so that one was just devastating for me because we had known each other for 40 years. He was literally my first friend. First day of kindergarten, preschool, walked in the door and he ran up to me and said, "My name's Kenny. Do you want to be my friend?" And we were friends ever since. Um, so when he died, it's like, okay, this can't happen anymore. I've got to do something. And I started looking for somewhere to get involved. Tried to talk myself into going to a walk for several years. And then in 2017, I finally went to my first walk in Kernersville, which
So what's
is
a walk?
the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Their annual fundraisers are what they call Out of the Darkness walks. So it's a walk for suicide loss survivors to create a community of people who have been affected by suicide, um, really to make people feel like they're not alone. And that's really what got me about it. Was I went to my first walk and they have a bead ceremony where we say um, everybody who's lost a parent to suicide would be wearing gold beads, so you can look around and see other people that lost a parent. But then we have a ceremony where we say, okay, now everybody who's lost a parent to suicide, hold up your beads. Um, I've always considered Kernersville a small town because I grew up there. And to me, it's like another version of Mayberry. Um, but at my first walk, there were 40, 50 people out of the, 400 that were there that had gold beads. And that was the first time since my dad had died almost 10 years before at that point that I didn't feel like I was alone in that whole thing. Like I was not the only person that had ever happened to. So that was my key to get involved. So after that walk, I started volunteering, started doing a lot of work with veteran community. I figure at 22 a day, there's no better place to apply my efforts.
Right.
And so then that's been my passion ever since. And then, like I say, in the end, I ended up getting a job at a hospital system where, they agree that we're working on that while I'm working. It's like my job and my side job, but a lot of my side job I can do during my job because it's helping the community.
Right.
And the hospital system has been a really big supporter for our walk ever since I joined there.
So are you guys still in Kernersville?
I live in Greensboro now,
Okay.
but the walk is in Kernersville.
Walks in Kernersville. Okay.
Yeah.
I had some friends there, the Graveleys in Kernersville that I used to spend a decent amount of time with,
Mm.
um, in different areas with that. So you've been doing the walks and you've been doing the AFSP stuff. What is an average like encounter for you with volunteering with AFSP look like?
So there's a couple different ones. We have a program called Healing Conversations, and that's for people who have lost someone to suicide. You can actually go on our website and fill out a form and say, like I lost a brother when he was 26 and I was 31 or whatever. And then they will try to match you to a volunteer that's been through as close to the thing as you can. So, like, if you get somebody's lost their father in their mid 30s, you'll generally get matched up with me. And then we just do a phone call so that you can talk to somebody who has really kind of been where you were and is probably the closest to being able to understand what you're feeling at that moment as anybody else. So that those take about an hour, hour and a half. A lot of the tabling events, like what we do with the Comic Con and stuff, that's just getting out, talking to people realizing that we even exist. Um, we'll go from people just walking by to picking up materials and not speaking and just moving on to, as you've seen, we have the treasure chest where people can write the name of the person they've lost on a coin and put it in the treasure chest. And then people would just stop and talk to us. And that's been anywhere from a, 2 or 3 minute talk to a 30 or 40 minute talk. Or when we were at Fayetteville the first time, it actually, with Jenna, turned out to be a healing conversation. I actually sat down with her for close to a half hour.
And that's Jenna Frank, right?
Yes, Jenna
Yeah.
Frank.
Yeah.
So I actually sat down with her for about a half hour and just told her, like, I know there's stuff you want to tell somebody that you can't tell your mom or your friends or. And so we actually sat there and talked for probably close to a half hour, and she got to tell me things that, like, she had been wanting to get off her chest but just didn't have an outlet for it.
So, transitioning into you being there at cons, you and your daughter, and is it just you and your daughter? Is it you and other family members? Like, who else is involved with it? Like,
Well, with the AFSP portion of it, it's a family event. When we do the walk each year in October, my son is parking attendant. My wife is feeding everybody and helping people find things. And Emma and I are trying to run everything in the background. The cons, not my wife and son's thing. So that's just a me and Emma thing. My son just looks at us like, y'all are weird, but
I
he
mean,
he lets us
I
know.
get it. Like that everybody isn't built for that. Um, so you've been doing the cons pretty consistently since 2023 then
Yeah.
for that. Um, how many shows do you do? Like, what's that look like? Do you have other goals for that? Are there places you want to be? Anything like that?
We typically, con wise, will do three, maybe four a year. Of course, we'll do the Fayetteville show. We'll do Brothers Boyd show. I try to get whatever pops up in Greensboro. We'll do that show. We won't make Geeksboro this year, but um, we typically try to do that one. And then if there's something over in we did HeroCon in Charlotte this year for the first time. So that'll be our four typical ones we'll do.
So will you be at the Greensboro one not this week but next week?
I will probably go as a guest.
Okay.
I'll probably drop in for a couple hours. I think Chris said he was going to come up, so I might go with him.
Okay. So what's the process like for y'all setting up? Do they still charge y'all? Is it like usually free? Like what's the
Most of the cons are all great, and they have nonprofit tables that they generally donate the table.
okay.
So it's really just like hotel and getting there. That's on us.
Now is that on you as a family or as the organization or how does that look?
The organization pays for the rooms because we typically it's a I've proven it's a segment that we don't reach anywhere else.
Yeah.
So everybody's behind us getting into that. And like this year, expanded into Charlotte was a big deal. Um, covering the hotel rooms for us down there.
Yeah.
And then Heroes Con was, good enough to comp the table for us. So we got to spend a couple days down there and talk with people there.
Um with that I know that like just at the show we were just at for the Brothers Boyd show, there was a fundraising raffle for that portion for the AFSP. How much fundraising is involved in what you do? Like,
That's when it comes around to the walk, that's the bulk of it. Like this year for the Triad Walk, I'm trying to raise $114,000 in sponsorships and people donating and coming out to the walk and all, which were about almost 30,000 now.
Okay.
So I've still got a month and a half to get there. A lot of it always comes in at the last minute, but when we took the walk over in 2020, it was a $50,000 a year walk. So we were coming out of COVID when I took, or yeah, we were coming out of COVID when I took it, and so we set it at a $70,000 goal. We ended up breaking that and going, and that was the first time it had been $100,000 walk. And so we are actually one of two, sometimes three, $100,000 walks in the state of the 8 that we do. And we've been $100,000 plus walk ever since I've taken it over so far.
So with the funding, where does the funding go to, like, and how's that spread out and everything?
So it goes to fund things like us coming to Comic Cons, and us going down to or going out to a high school and doing our program called It's Real. We have a program set up just for middle schoolers, a program just for high schoolers. AFSP is the largest nonprofit researcher for suicide prevention. I don't know if you remember that first year at con, we brought the guy from Canada that was a research. He was one of the researchers to talk.
It sounds familiar, but man,
Yeah, you might not have got over to the room, but
I don't think I made it
so
to the room. No.
I spent a lot of time trying to get him prepped. I'm like, this is not a scientific thing. It's a limited attention span here. You've got to kind of tone it down on the big words. And he tried, but he had never been to a con, which we didn't know when he came. And so they left the doors open, and like every time somebody would walk by the door, it would pull his attention, and he would break.
That's a rough thing to begin with.
And of course, he starts talking, and somebody comes in dressed like the creature from Where the Wild Things Are. Full fursuit, head, everything. Doesn't take the head off. Just walks in and sits down and is staring at him, and he's like, So we kind of figured out that was not as good an idea as we'd hoped it would be.
And so there's just a lot that goes with it. So what have your like you've talked about Jenna and things like that. What have been some of the like unique experiences in doing this for Comic Cons and stuff? And what have you seen that's just kind of stood out from other areas?
One thing my wife and I always say is, Comic Con or not, it doesn't really matter. But wherever we put a table, we always end up meeting that one person that is why we put a table there. Like God put us in those people's path. And you always find them, and we find people like, I think the thing that got me the most about coming to Fayetteville was I didn't realize how close that late 20, early 30 group was connected to the Power Rangers.
Yeah.
Because my kids were young enough, we didn't really miss it. I was old enough, I didn't really watch it, except for here and there, just because it reminded me of Ultraman. But Friday and Saturday when we were there, people kind of came by and they didn't seem to understand why we were there, and a couple people kind of talked and said hey. And then Saturday night when we had the larger event where everybody was talking about Jason David Frank and that kind of memorial event for him, it was like that night it clicked with a lot of people. Oh, that's why you're here. And Sunday we were swamped. Like people just came over and started talking, and like we had girls just literally, like, I had to come out from behind the table and just hug this girl because she was just bawling. It like just hit her how overwhelmed she was that Jason David Frank had died. And so that was really interesting for us. Growing up in the con world, as a kid, hey, I was there in 1977 when Star Wars came out. Uh, I had a friend that his parents owned a movie theater, so we were there day one, and we were hooked day one. So as we were teenagers, we always went to cons, and I grew up in that world, and I had those friends, and I know a lot of the people that come to cons, sometimes that's the only time they get out, and those
Or
are
it's
the
the
only
only time they
people.
feel connected while they're out.
Right, right. It's the only time they're really connected, and it's the only time getting to dress up as the character that they like and coming out in a group of people and being accepted is the only time oftentimes they feel accepted, especially now with the younger kids, um, high school age and stuff. I mean, like the ones that's where they feel accepted. That's where they find people who think like them. And I provide an opportunity for them to talk about their mental health that isn't there if I'm not there.
So you mentioned that there were four shows that you do and are about four. Do you think there are other people associated with your organization that could go more? Do you like what would be like a practical thing for this to multiply and having mental health and AFSP at other shows and stuff? Like what would that look like? Not that you have to do that. You can't do everything.
We seriously would need more volunteers that are familiar with the con world. I think that's one thing we know is, if we send somebody that doesn't really know anything about it, they're not very well received, and then it doesn't really hit like we want it to. Yeah, Emma and I show up, we'll pick a character, we'll do our costumes, and people feel like, okay, so they get it, they're part of this, and they actually stop and talk to us. And the story I love to tell is my wife went with me last year to a show in Greensboro, and 501st was there, and there was a Mandalorian group there. And so there was a guy dressed as a red Mandalorian, and he stopped at the table and started talking to my wife. And I had gotten caught talking to somebody else who was kind of in a struggle and was working through something. And turns out the guy was a Marine. He had been in Fallujah twice,
Hmm.
Afghanistan once, and out of the three squads that he had gone with, he was one of four that came back out of all three squads. In one squad, he was the only one that made it back. And so he starts to tell my wife this, and he's literally on the edge of breaking down. And my wife is like, "You need to stop and help me." Because it was her first con. She's like, "I don't know what to do." And I'm like, "You're doing fine. He's talking to you." And so I was trying to wrap it over here, and then he actually took his helmet off and started talking to her. And so then I was able to get free, and we talked to him a long time, and he told us how he had almost taken his life a couple times, and that his daughter was probably the only reason he was still here, and he was just so thankful that we had come to the con, because he felt like there were other people like him there that wouldn't know that. And so when he left, my wife was like, "Oh, I just felt like I messed that up." And I'm like, "You don't understand how well you did. He talked to you long enough that he took his helmet off." And
That's
my wife
that's
is
a big
like,
deal
"Oh,
for a
yeah."
Mandalorian.
Yeah, she's like, "Oh, it probably got hot." And I'm like, "No, no, no, that's not how this works, honey." Like, these are serious cosplay guys. Have you seen him any other time today without that helmet on?
So, I mean, there are a lot of people at shows and cons that are going through stuff that cons are in a lot of way their therapy and their outlet and their things like that. What do you see, not just from what AFSP can do, but what are there things that you would suggest or kind of direct for cons to do to help along those lines? Do you think there's anything that they could implement just on their own and how they do things?
Sometimes if you can find somebody for a panel that's a mental health person that does enjoy the con world. I know there's one lady, she loves to dress up as Batgirl, and she actually wrote a book called Superhero Grief.
Huh.
And it's a very clinical book. It's written from a nurse's standpoint, but it goes through the stories of Batman, Wonder Woman, all this under the premise of people rise up from their trauma. And her one of the, she always starts with, if Bruce Wayne hadn't have seen his parents killed, would he have become Batman? And then everybody's first question is like, well, which universe are you talking about?
Like Earth what? Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, she goes through all the different stories of like Deadpool and Wonder Woman and all these and how their their trauma and dealing with it and overcoming it is what made them who they are. And so if you can find those kinds of people, um, I think that can be really impactful. Um, it's hard, especially for one day cons, because people just want to go around and find their stuff and go. Uh, we found like with AFSP, generally, if I'm going to do a thing, I'll try to do it on Sunday because Saturday, everybody is, let's walk around and see what's here. Let me decide what I'm going to buy. I'll go home and think about the things. Sunday morning, they want to come in and get that stuff, and then they're almost kind of done. They'll
Yeah.
just wander, and then they typically will wander in and see us on Sunday.
Well, and one thing that I've seen too, and not that, and I'm fully aware that church people don't have everything together more than anybody else, and that church people need this as much, and we struggle with everything on the same levels. Um, but quite oftentimes, a lot of times, Sunday shows or the like Sunday one day shows, or even just the Sundays or shows, are a lot of times when people who aren't church people will go, because if they're going to pick one or the other, um, they're going to end up picking to go to the show than
Mm-hmm.
that. And so, because like for me, and I'm aware of it, like if it's a 4 day show or a 2 day show or whatever else, I know that Sunday until 3 o'clock is probably going to be like super dry on my end. Um,
Mm-hmm.
just because most of the people that would want to buy a Bible study or a devotional, they're at church. Um, so I feel like Sundays are a good day for the people who are looking and the people who are um, kind of trying to find resources because a lot of times people who are connected in church and things are somewhere else. Um,
Well, and I didn't realize on some of the Sundays where you've been at some of the events that you did a service on
it
Sunday mornings.
it's normally like this is no shade to smaller shows, but it's normally bigger shows because smaller shows if people aren't staying overnight, they're probably going to drive in and leave.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like all of the Galaxy Cons and some of the other shows, we usually do a church service and like Galaxy Con, I want to say we've had one at every Galaxy Con from the time they were Super Con up. Um, and so let's say 7 years of it. Um, sounds right. Um, of doing church services, and we've had anywhere from 150 to 250 at Raleigh that are paying to come in there. And 9 times out of 10, most of the people in there aren't Christians or they're not where they want to be with God. And a lot of times it's really just people that are looking for something. Just the last show I did in Raleigh, um, I had three separate people at that one show that just came up and told me after the service that's like, I haven't been to church in 20 years. I haven't been to church in 30 years. Like, I haven't been to church since my husband died. Um, and, they were looking for a place to connect. And I think that's a good space, um, for that, which is why, like, if you hear my geek church messages, they're very, life affirming and mental health encouraging, just because I know if you're here on Sunday morning, you probably need it, and,
Mm-hmm.
and you need the love, and like I had one person who had been to like 4 or 5 of the geek church services say like, why don't you like ever like swing on people? Like, why aren't you like preaching some like deep discipleship stuff? I'm like, have you looked at this room, buddy?
Read the room, buddy. Read the room.
Read the room. I was like, that person over there, I think is like one loud noise from jumping out of their skin. That person over there is brokenhearted. These people just need some love. And um like, and it's just because I mean, even like I get that, especially if cons are your safe space and then all of a sudden you're like snuck up on by some Jesus people, it can be pretty scary, especially when you go to these big shows where you've got angry street preachers outside telling everybody they're
Mhm.
going to hell for going inside. And I've told this story. It's on Blue in the Face, and probably like if you've listened to me ever talk about this before, but there's like one year at GalaxyCon Raleigh, let's say it was 2019 or 2018. Um, a young girl dressed like Deku came to my booth bawling, and she's like, "I just need to know, does God hate me?" Because these guys outside told me that God hate me for coming in here, and like it's like the people that are already got enough struggles on their plate that don't need more. So
Yeah, we have a lot of that when we do the Pride events. If we have tables there,
yeah,
well, I get the same thing. We'll have people come up and they're talking about AFSP, but then if we get the long enough conversation, my faith will kind of come up in it, and like you say, they're like, well, does God hate me? Am I doomed? Like he says I am, and I'm like, I'm not here to judge. I'm here to make the introduction. And so, we've had a couple times, even at Pride, where we've been able to just sit and pray with somebody and let them start their path on finding their way.
yeah. Well, and that's just one of the things is that church culture, and this isn't to just shame the church, but like I lived it long enough that um, we can be really bad for just breeding people to be salt that stays in the shaker,
Hmm.
um, and instead of actually being where it's needed, and it's the places that it's the places where they're populated the least by believers that are kind of needed the most. But with that, like sometimes just like I'm sure you see, sometimes people just really want to know that they're seen and they're loved and they're heard more than
Hmm.
they're like dogmaed in that direction.
Yeah. I think sometimes at the cons, people are a little more comfortable to come and talk to us because they are in cosplay.
It's anonymous.
So, yeah, I don't know you. I'll never notice you again. Even if I live in the same city as you, I won't recognize them, more than likely. So I think sometimes it does open a door for people to have an opportunity to talk to us that they don't normally have.
Yeah, it definitely does provide a sense of freedom and anonymity because there are people that'll do stuff at a con they wouldn't do anywhere else, including have conversations about their mental health and their struggles.
Mhm.
Um, so being a longtime geek, as you're mentioning with Star Wars and everything else, what have you seen in geek culture, pop culture, nerd culture, anything like that, that you would consider beneficial or healthy in terms of mental health and suicide prevention?
So one thing that's been really neat, and I started this year. I spent some time doing some research, and I went back and said, I Googled, give me a list of comics that deal with suicide, and I went and I found a ton of different issues of there's a Deadpool, there's a Wolverine, there's a Superman, all
A
those.
Nightwing one, yeah.
Um, and so the ones I could afford and the ones that like our local comic shops were nice enough to donate or give me some discount on. I put those out at our table to give me another reason for people to stop. And then we can have that conversation of this is how comics have dealt with it across time. But looking through the comics, what I found is really interesting if you look at this Wonder Woman here back in 1990 to to this Mr. Miracle back in 2017, you can see the language of suicide in the comics has changed with the language of how we speak about suicide.
Hmm.
The 90s Wonder Woman, it's blasted across the front of the cover, so and so commits suicide. But now we're starting to see, even in the comics, people are calling it he's died by suicide. I think my favorite one I found, well, there's three really good ones. There's a Deadpool where Deadpool actually talks someone out of dying by suicide. It's probably the greatest one of any of them, and I think it's mostly because it's Deadpool, and you would not ever think he would have that conversation. And then there's a graphic novel from Adventures of Superman that's really got a really, really good message in it. But my favorite one I found recently is Mr. Miracle. There's a 2017 set of Mr. Miracle, which I actually sold to someone at BoydCon, so I have to find another copy. Yes.
Yeah.
But in the one I had, he actually goes into men's mental health. And there's actually, probably 2 pages framed up really well where it's, his struggle is being a father, a husband, and then all those things that we all deal with every day. Now he's a superhero that can't die. And he actually attempts suicide in the comic book, which of course doesn't work, but it was a really interesting look at men's mental health in comics.
Well, and that's with that one too. It's just like I read that one and straight up forgot that that's how the book started.
Mm-hmm.
Like I haven't like I didn't pick I read it, raved about it, talked about it for a hot minute that it was one of the best books forever. Didn't read it again until this year. And then I was like, "Oh, I forgot this how this book started." Like I remembered all the stuff that came later, but that's literally how the book started out. I'm like, "Oh." Um But I mean, that's the thing, like, those stories being told helps people connect and help people to be seen.
Yeah.
I think it can be
There's
pretty
also
important.
a similar story in a graphic novel of Sandman that eventually rolls through the Netflix series. So it's from that set of books where they do the Netflix series. Sandman, he's done and he's trying to die and can't,
Okay, that's interesting.
which was a really different play on it, even from Mr. Miracle. It's the Sandman one's a really interesting look at it.
Well, there's one Sandman one, and it was a shorter one, and I think it only takes one issue. Um, but there's a gentleman who is on the verge of suicide. Um, like, and despair is literally lingering over him, and despair calls Morpheus and Desire in to see if they can change his mind.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's the same way. I think it's
that's
issue 5 or 6 of this graphic novel
yeah.
that I had to buy it as a graphic novel because once Sandman hit Netflix, you can't find a copy of anything Sandman.
I bought it as a Kindle single issue.
Hmm.
But I actually did a devotional on that one in one of the Faith and Fandom books. Um, with that, just because it's so poignant. But has there been anything else you've seen that's been really good for that topic or
Uh, I think the things I could say have been really good is this year I called HeroCon and she was like, "Oh, good. I've been trying to figure out how to contact you. We've heard what you've been doing to Fayetteville, and we've wanted you to come." I'm now starting to see. Of course, she is a good friend of mine, but a buddy of mine's wife who leads another cause here locally. she's starting to set tables up at cons. This will be interesting. She'll be at Geeksboro for her first one, so I'll probably go over and harass her just for fun. But
That's awesome.
it's people are starting to notice that we're there, and it's starting to sink in with them that this is a group that needs our help that we don't normally access.
Just to ask, have you watched Ted Lasso?
A little bit. Emma more so than me.
Um, like it's not for everybody, and it can be pretty gruff around the edges. It I want to say towards the end of season 2 or 3 really deals a little bit more heavily with suicide in a really good way in terms of the discussion of it that I thought was pretty powerful. Um, but you got to get through it to get to that part. And
Yeah, Emma's probably seen it. She likes Ted Lasso.
um, so if you had any general advice for people who would want to help with AFSP or with suicide prevention in general, what would your advice be for them?
Um, don't wait, do it. Go on to the AFSP website with your local chapter and fill out the Volunteer 101 form and jump in wherever you're comfortable. We've had a lot of success this year. We got a new volunteer coordinator. She's done an amazing job with people are filling out the 101 form and going through the class. And then she spends a good bit of time finding out what do you want to do? Where do you want, what are the things that interest you? Because some people are I want to get wrapped up in firearm safety. Some people I want to do the healing conversations, or some I want a table. I want to be involved in pride. And we used to just kind of, the cons tomorrow. Anybody want to help? But we're now starting to get some committees and get people that are more interested in those things. So, outside of North Carolina, if there are people, especially in the con world that have experience with suicide, would like to help out, reach out to your local AFSP and mention, what North Carolina is doing with being part of the cons, and you want to do it in your state. And they're more than glad to call me, and we can talk about how we got started.
You just mentioned it. Dude, what's the training look like?
It's about an hour long. It's kind of a welcome. Here's some basic statistics on suicide. It's a lot of discussing triggers when talking to people, and the new language of, we don't say commit, we say died by. Some of that language, getting people just used to that, is basically what the Volunteer 101 is. And like I said, it takes about an hour, and then we'll find out where your passion is. If you want to do a table, then we'll put you with somebody who has experienced tabling, so you can kind of get the feel for what that's like. And we've done rock concerts, cons, the pride events. This year, I didn't think next month I go to Papa Roach, because the lead singer for Papa Roach actually did a song with National, called "Will We Leave a Light On," and then he redid the song as a duet with Carrie Underwood.
Okay.
And that one I just about can't listen to. That one turns out to be a tearjerker every time, so I just don't even listen to it. But yeah, he's part of our new Talk Away the Dark program, and that came on the tail end of some work with Daltrey after he lost his daughter. So we're finally getting some people out there to see it. It happens to more people than we realize.
Honestly, and I know this is, different people connect with different things, but 21 Pilots has really been one of the most vocal in the music world about it and the stuff in those areas. And you can name like 5 songs off the top of my head that's just like, hey, don't.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Emma keeps begging for them to come close so she can work her way into backstage.
the last show we went to with my kids was they stood by a drum riser and got to like be really close, but not close enough to have those conversations. But um, I was just thinking that their album drops tomorrow, and there's already stuff kind of leaning towards that as well. But um, so resources for people that are struggling with suicidal thoughts, feelings. I know 988 is a big
Hmm.
one, right? Are there any other resources or directions you would point people that are struggling?
988 is probably your best resource just because it's a kind of a one-stop shop for everything. Um, Obviously, if you dial 988 and press one, that'll take you specifically to the veterans line. Two, for some period of time, still will take you to the LGBTQ, but that's probably going to fade out for a little while with all the new budgeting. But the Trevor Project is a fill in for that. So you can go to the trevorproject.org, I think it is. And that specifically deals with suicidal thoughts and ideations with the LGBTQ community. You're starting to see some Two Spirit stuff pop up more for our um, First Peoples groups. In the my daughter tells me it's LGBTQIA2S plus now. So the Two Spirit concept is more in the Native American side of it. And so we're starting to see some things pop up specifically for that.
Okay.
And
Uh,
then there's always, in an immediate need, there's your local emergency room, ED, primary care. That if I'm going to say anything, since I work for a hospital, I'm going to plug primary care. Talk to your doctor when you have your annual physical. Talk to your doctor about your feelings. When they ask you the questions, have you had this or are you been depressed? Answer them honestly and let help start at primary care. Because they have all the resources. They can refer you to the right people. Waiting till you're in a bind and then trying to find a therapist is not working right now because the demand is so high and the supply of therapists is so low. So if you can start with your primary care doctor, they can get you on a path that can get you help in between getting you to an established therapy patient or whatever you need. But by all means, primary care is the place to start.
and I'm just gonna say this because I think it's cool, and we did a podcast with her a little while ago. One of my friends does geek therapy. She's a therapist that does geek themed therapy.
Hmm.
Um, where specifically if you really like anime A or B or C, she can target some of the references and analytical things to use the characters from those things as part of like what she's doing or video games or things like that. It's
Yeah,
pretty
I mean,
neat.
like you look at characters like Deadpool. They give us examples for most any condition.
Yeah.
You could reference almost any Deadpool. There's some condition there you could talk about with him.
And so she's played that out and it's pretty neat. I think her thing is called Revive and Conquer. Um
Oh, cool.
yeah, it's pretty neat. She's out of like Raleigh area. So if you like, I know you don't like have merch and stuff at shows or anything like that. You're there just providing resources for people. So afsp.org is where you'd want to point people. Do you have
Hmm.
anything that you would want people to follow of you online?
Yeah, there's some links I'll send you to go along with this, but obviously there's um, the afsp.org. There's also .org/healing conversations, which takes you to our healing conversations page. Or you can also go to the walks and find a walk near you. That's probably our best way to connect with AFSP is find your local walk. There's no charge to sign up and walk. We ask that you raise money, but you don't have to. But just go out there and get that experience and meet those people who are in the same spot you've been in or have been in the same spot you're in, either way. Um, I think those are the best ways to really connect.
And you and your daughter Emma, who's a youth pastor in
Mhm.
the western part of the state, you guys cosplay when you do this. What's been your favorite cosplay you've done so far?
Uh, I honestly think the Flintstone one has been fun, but I think the funniest one was when I did the Scout from Up, because it took half a day before somebody recognized what it was. But I just kind of turned and had the little flag sticking up over my shoulder, and the guy was like, "Oh my God, that's the coolest thing ever! You're that kid!" And it was really just my Scout leader uniform, and an empty backpack. But that is really cool. And I think she did Peggy Carter that year.
Okay, nice.
And I've got my pictures of me as Nick Fury and Sergeant Slaughter with me in the chokehold, which, I'll cherish that forever.
Uh, that's awesome, man. Well, I'll just say this, as someone who spends a lot of time in the con world, thank you for volunteering your time and being there. I know it makes a difference, and I know that sometimes you might be the first line in keeping people around with that. So I appreciate all the work you're doing with that, and thank you for taking time to come and share with me today, and bounce schedules around and deal with internet outages and everything else.
Yeah.
Um,
But it's like I was telling Kristen the other day. I mean, Emma and I just appreciate how much all you guys from Fayetteville have taken us in as part of the family. I mean, just Friday night when we were at the pizza place, I was just kind of like that dad sitting back in the corner and was looking at everybody sitting around talking and laughing and eating pizza. And I'm like, this really is a family of people. And we all just really seem to look forward to getting that chance to get together. And it's great to be a part of that world.
It is, and it's a good community and it's a good connection, and it definitely goes beyond just comics and stuff, just of actually the relational build of everything. And honestly, I think it's one of the reasons why cons are important because that can be a good. It's like a bowling with bumpers up. Cons can
Hmm.
be one of those places that just like kind of you get thrown into it, and you're probably going to meet a friend somewhere on the way down.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to leave one and not meet somebody.
Yeah, it really is, whether you want to or not. Some shows you might just want to get in and out, but tough. Um, Again, thank you for taking time to listen. Everybody that's watching and listening, thank you for taking time to listen as well. And you can find this podcast and other podcasts over on the Love Thy Nerd podcast network. You can also find us on a YouTube specific for this podcast from Love Thy Nerd. So it should be YouTube Love Thy Nerd Faith and Fandom, or Faith and Fandom Love Thy Nerd. I'm sorry, Matt. You can edit that with the correct link in there. And but also make sure you check out your local AFSP. Trying so hard, my brain is like grinding gears every time I try and say that in the right order. Um, and Darren, thank you for taking time to hang out with me for the last little bit. And uh,
Oh, thank you for giving me the opportunity to jump on with this.
it's my pleasure, man. I was like, it's and it being September, it's the I think it's a good time to do it. What's the date for your walk?
The Triad area walk, which is the High Point, Greensboro, Winston area, is October 11th at Triad Park in Kernersville.
All right.
There are 7 other walks around the state. So if you're in North Carolina, just go to the AFSP site and find the community walk to find the one closest to you.
All right. Everybody, thank you for taking time to listen and watch. Make sure you check out and support your local AFSP. And if you're in the North Carolina area, you might get to run into Darren in cosplay and come by their booth as well. Yeah.
Definitely.
You
We'll,
have a
we'll
great day.
be we'll be in Fayetteville in October.
Fayetteville, October 18th and 19th. I won't be there for the show most likely, but I'm hoping to show up for Duke Geek Church that morning. But that's going to be a weird thing of like not being there for the booth because if I'm not there for the booth on Saturday, it's harder to like connect with people for Sunday. But we're gonna see how we can work it out.
Yeah.
Um, But thank you, everybody.
I'll promote you.
You'll promote me. I appreciate you. All right. Y'all have a great day.